Quiet on set. Rolling. Action.
The BFI Film Academy is
life-changing,
eye-opening, unique,
inspiring,
encouraging,
inclusive,
diverse,
helpful,
motivational,
and loads of fun.
The BFI Film Academy is for talented 16 to 19-year-olds. We deliver 50 courses across the UK. They gain specialist skills on our courses so that they can work towards a career in the film industry.
They want to learn about the different roles in the industry, and they want to learn about the next steps, and they want to learn about getting their foot in the door. This provides them with a really good opportunity.
We offer specialist courses in documentary, animation, script writing and craft skills.
How are you feeling anyway?
Alive.
We've talked to editors, directors.
It gives you much more of a rounded appreciation of what goes on the film set.
We work with cameras and boom mics.
Learning from people who are at the top of their game.
It's given me hands-on experience and contacts as well.
At the time I didn't have any film experience and they still gave me that first chance.
We've had masterclasses with professionals and they talk to us about how they began.
It's great to finally have a sense of community. People from all sorts of places come together and relate to each other.
The young people that graduate have access to a number of opportunities, which includes mentoring programs and a traineeship program.
We place young people in the industry. We work with Lucasfilm, we've worked with Disney, and we've worked with Eon on Bond.
The BFI Film Academy gives Lucasfilm such a passionate group of people. It enhances creativity and innovation on our sets.
It got me the role of script trainee on The Rise of Skywalker.
I would never have been on Black Widow if it hadn't have been for the Academy.
the alumni care is so strong.
Definitely helped me to create my own production company for marginalised groups.
If you want to do film, it's something you should definitely look to do.
It opens a lot of doors.
I'm loving this experience.
We want to make sure that voices are heard from across the UK, and we want to make sure that the BFI Film Academy supplies the next generation of young filmmakers to the film industry.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the BFI Film Academy's May Lab. My name is Alex, and I'm the Film Academy Festival and Events producer. So today is our first lab in our 2021-2022 series. Today will be a masterclass, and this masterclass will aim to help you better understand the complexities of the UK film industry. So we'll talk about how the industry is structured, how it operates, and also what you need to know in order to start your careers in film. The masterclass will be delivered by Helen Johnson, who is the founder of the film and TV training provider Talking Point. But before I hand over to Helen, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about how today's session will be structured, and also tell you a little bit about the BFI Film Academy and the opportunities that we have for young people aged 16 to 25 who want to work in film. So we have the Film Academy team working with me on the event today. My colleague Zakia will join me in telling you a little bit about the BFI Film Academy. You can see Zakia now on screen. I also have my colleague Winnie, who will be helping in the chat box. So if you have any questions about the BFI Film Academy, or about today's lab, or anything that Zakia and I talk through today, please put them in the chat box, and Winnie will try to answer your questions as soon as she can. But if you have any questions for Helen about today's masterclass, about the UK film industry, then please pop those questions in the Q&A box on the bottom of your screens. And we'll devote the last 15 minutes of today's session, so from about 1:45 to 2, to your questions for Helen. We'll try to get through as many of them as we can. So any questions for me and Zakia, please put them in the chat box. Any questions for Helen, please put them in the Q&A box. And just so you know, today's session is being recorded and will be uploaded to the BFI YouTube channel next week. So I'll now hand over Zakia to tell you about the Film Academy and give you a little bit of context to the show reel that you've just seen when the session started.
Thanks, Alex. Yes, hi everyone. I think we're going to just share a quick presentation. So BFI Film Academy, I'm going to talk briefly about our courses, which are for 16 to 19-year-olds. And Alex is then going to talk a bit about the other stuff that we have going on, which is for anyone 16 to 25. So if you are over 19, please don't worry, we will be talking about opportunities for you too. Next slide, Fiona, please. So we have courses open for 16 to 19-year-olds across the UK, as I said very eloquently in the video. And if you're interested in film, then it's a great place to start. Our short courses run across the UK, and you get a basic introduction to the film industry. You can learn about the careers in the film industry, and it gives you that knowledge and those skills to network, meet other creatives, and create your own short film as a group. And it's just a great place as well to meet others who are based in your area who are really interested in film. So you can build those connections, build that network, and collaborate with other people in your area. There's lots of masterclasses, industry speakers, and they're like a huge part of the course. So it's a good way to learn about the industry in your area as well. We also have specialist courses. So our short courses run from September to around February, depending on where you're based. And the applications for those open in about autumn time. But specialist courses are open now. We've got 3 specialist courses running this summer. We have 7 altogether. So at the moment, the ones which are open are our programming course, our screenwriting course, and our craft skills course. So just to give you a bit of context, programming is learning about film programming, marketing, distribution. You'll also get to put on your own film festival at the Showroom Cinema in Sheffield. Screenwriting is meeting the experts who are screenwriters. You get to write scripts. They help you with working in teams to write scripts, but also writing a monologue. And this specialist course, you'll be able to do a live reading with actors, but you'll also get a film of an actor reading out your monologue out loud, and you'll be able to keep that as part of your portfolio. We also have a craft skills course, which is running in the summer, and you focus on a chosen role. So say you're interested in sound, you might be interested in directing, cinematography, something like that. You can concentrate on that specialism, and you'll get masterclasses from professionals who are also working in that specialism. You'll get personal development, so they'll create a plan with you for your career, and in groups you'll also create a short film. So all of our courses run across the UK that open 16 to 19-year-olds. You can apply for them on the website. I think Winnie will be dropping all of the links to the website and to the applications in the chat. If you have any questions about our courses, then please let me know. I'll be in the chat for the rest of the time, so I'm happy to answer those. The main thing that I would say is that there is a cost which comes with the course, but if you can't pay it, that's absolutely fine. Just make sure you apply. Don't let that put you off, and we will make sure that you're able to attend. Our courses can be free if needed. I think we're going to play a quick specialist courses show reel, just so that you can have a look at it and remind you of all the things which I've just said.
I came here wanting to learn sound, and look at me now. I've got quite the equipment on me, and I know how to work it as well.
Thank you. Great. So if you take part in one of our courses, then you get a whole host of alumni opportunities which you can access afterwards. So if you are 16 to 19, make sure that you do take part so that you can use these opportunities to progress your career. We have loads of stuff available, which depends on the year. There's lots of different things which come in and we'll put out to everyone, and we'll make sure that people can get involved in lots of different opportunities. But I just wanted to chat through a couple which are our main ones and happen every year. So first off, we have a mentoring scheme with BAFTA. If you're interested in this, then the mentoring scheme is 3 sessions with a mentor who's matched to you. So if you're a female and you're an editor, we will match you with a woman who's an editor who can understand kind of your career and where you're going, or something similar to that. The mentoring scheme is run completely by BAFTA, obviously with the support of us, but they will support you throughout the mentoring scheme. They have an induction day which you can take part in, and they'll let you know how to get the best out of that process. And anyone's eligible to apply. So if you've taken part in the alumni programme, you are eligible to apply. It's a really popular scheme, so just make sure that you have some kind of small portfolio or something like that, just to show you're passionate and eager about the area that you want to go into. We also have another mentoring scheme, which is with Lux Artists. Lux Artists is a 6-month mentoring scheme. You get placed with a mentor from the Lux Artists roster, and you have monthly meetings with them, and they are people who are working in the industry, working now, and really want to help support you to broaden your network and your career. We have lots and lots of different opportunities with that mentoring scheme, and we support you throughout, so you're supported through the BFI Film Academy, but also through Lux Artists. Applications for Lux Artists will be open in the autumn, and applications for the BAFTA mentoring scheme will be open next January. We also have BAFTA Careers Days, and this year we're doing above the line and below the line sessions for BAFTA. So if you're interested in either of those areas, then you can take part. They're for alumni as well, and we've got one happening next weekend, I think on the 15th of May, and you can sign up for that now if you are interested in BAFTA Careers Days. The Careers Days consist of a keynote speaker and also roundtable sessions where you get a smaller group and you can ask the questions you want to an industry professional. And then after that, at the bottom, we have our Future Skills trainee programme. If you are an alumni of Film Academy courses, then you can apply for this programme. It takes place around yearly, and you're placed on a film set, on a major feature film or on a high-end TV production, and you're placed there for a minimum of 24 weeks on set, paid at London living wage. You work as part of the crew, as part of the team, so you could be a camera trainee, a lighting trainee, hair and makeup, whatever it is. At the moment, we've got around 55 trainees on 2 high-end TV programmes and a feature film who are working across those productions in those departments. So that's a great opportunity. It gets you a foot in the door of the industry and you get to network, and you can do that if you have taken part in one of our courses. Applications for Future Skills will hopefully open in the autumn. So that programme runs kind of ad hoc, but I'm always happy to have a chat with everyone, and if anyone's particularly interested in it, they can have a chat with you about how to get involved. And that is it from our courses side. So I'm going to hand over to Alex, who will talk to you more about the Future Film Festival and other things.
Hi, everyone. We have the Film Academy events in addition to all the courses and the alumni opportunities that Zakia talked through about. So we run regular Film Academy events. We have, today's a lab, and so we have our monthly lab events taking place on Zoom and on in venue when we can. They happen on second Saturday of each month, and they're practical sessions. They're focused on a particular aspect of the film industry. So we bring in industry professionals to talk to you about the film industry and how you can get in and learn more about it. Each of our events is programmed under a specific strand, one of 3 strands, which are storytelling, business of film, and career ladder. So for example, today's masterclass falls under business of film, as we are telling you about how the business behind the UK film industry, how it operates. We have quite a lot of attendees of our Film Academy Lab events, both online and in venue when we are in venue. So this is a good opportunity at labs, not only to hear, professional tips and advice from industry experts, but also to meet other young like-minded people who are interested in the film industry and potentially maybe even find collaborators for your projects. So obviously this past year, all our labs have been online, but we have set up a Facebook networking group for all of you to network and meet each other. So feel free to join that group. I think Winnie will post the link to it in the chat box shortly, and just share links to your portfolios, your work, and talk to each other and find collaborators for your project. And we are hoping to be back in venue later on this summer as well. So to add an in-venue component to this online series of labs, so that you guys who are in London or who are able to come to London will be able to meet each other face to face as well. Also, all our labs events are recorded and uploaded to the BFI YouTube channel. So if you want to check out some of the last year's labs, you can do so on the BFI YouTube channel. And again, I'll ask Winnie to post the link to our labs YouTube playlist in the chat box as well, so you can check that out. Then in addition to labs, we also have our scene events, and scene, they're weekly events and take place on Instagram Live every Thursday at 4 p.m. We have a group of BFI Film Academy young programmers who I'm going to talk about in a little bit, but they host all of our scene events, and they talk to younger filmmakers like you guys about their films and about their careers. So it's an opportunity for you to get kind of peer-to-peer tips and advice. So to hear about what other young filmmakers across the UK are doing, and what is working for them, what is not working for them, just to learn from each other. And obviously this is on Instagram Live, so it's free to attend. You can join at any time. And if you, again, want to check out some of the previous events, you can do so on IGTV. And then in addition to our regular labs and scene events, we have our big event, which is Future Film Festival. So Future Film Festival is for 16 to 25-year-olds who want to get involved in film and screen industries. We are now in our 15th year, and we are the UK's largest film festival for young filmmakers. Future Film Festival takes place in February over 4 days, and we screen short films made by young filmmakers from the UK, but also internationally as well. But very importantly, we also have a really strong industry events program that takes place at Future Film Festival. So we have 4 days of masterclasses, panel discussions, roundtables with industry experts, and networking opportunities, so that you really are able to learn about the industry, make some connections in the industry, obviously meet each other as well. Again, all the events that are part of the Future Film Festival program are programmed under those same 3 strands as our labs events. So storytelling, business of film, and career ladder. So that can help you choose what event you're interested in, what event you want to attend. Our next festival takes place 17th to the 20th of February 2022. But submissions are now open through Film Freeway. Film Freeway is the submission platform we use, and you can see the link to submit on screen, and Winnie has just posted it in the chat box as well. So if you have a short film that's 10 minutes or less in duration, and you were age 16 to 25 when you made it, please do submit it. We would love to see it. Submissions are open until August the 6th. And there is a small submission fee of £4 to submit, and this fee is used to pay our young programmers who watch all the submissions and help us long list the film program for Future Film Festival. And if your film is accepted into the festival, you may be nominated for one of the 10 awards that we have, and if you're the winner, you can win cash prizes, kit prizes, and mentorships as well. So really, really good opportunity. I would encourage you to submit to Future Film Festival if you have short films, or if you're just about to finish a short film and you think it will be complete before August. So I think now we're just going to watch the highlight reel from this year's festival that obviously was completely digital. And just before we do that, I wanted to let you know that also you can watch all of the Future Film Festival events on the BFI YouTube as well, and we will post a link to that in the chat box shortly. So Fiona, go ahead and play the reel.
I am delighted to welcome you to the 14th BFI Future Film Festival. This year's festival saw over 1,000 submissions of short films made by young people from 47 countries across the world.
I think it's great that BFI Academy and Screen Skills and everybody does offer these kind of opportunities.
I want to say a huge thank you to the BFI for creating this amazing space for young people to share their work.
This festival is a showcase of all the hard work young filmmakers have contributed to our industry over the last year, and hopefully you will be inspired to continue to do so in the future.
So that was Future Film Festival. And now the final thing are young programmers who I've mentioned earlier. At the moment, we are looking for 10 young people aged 16 to 25 to join the team as BFI Film Academy young programmers and help us shape and promote the Film Academy Events Program 2021-22. So this role involves previewing film submissions for Future Film Festival, as I've mentioned before, programming and hosting events online and in venue, not just for Film Academy, but for our BFI festivals as well, including London Film Festival and Flair. It involves generating marketing and editorial content and just generally acting as the face of Film Academy events. So the role is open to anyone who is 16 to 25 from anywhere in the UK. The role will be based, there will be opportunities to be involved digitally and also in venue if you're based close to London. So wherever you are in the UK, you're eligible to apply. Please do so. We want to hear from people from all over the UK. I would encourage you to apply if you are passionate about film, if you like being on camera and hosting events, and if you're interested in programming and also writing about film. So applications are now open. If you just Google BFI job opportunities, you'll be taken to our BFI jobs portal where all the BFI opportunities are listed. And what you need to do is just, I wouldn't apply any filters, just search all jobs and this opportunity will come up there, young programmers. And I think the portal is down today because the IT team are doing a little bit of maintenance, but it will be back up and running tomorrow. So if you are interested, I encourage you to apply, and the applications close on Friday. So not that much time left, but please do apply. It's a great opportunity. This scheme, we only just started last year, and it's a great way for you to develop your experience and in hosting and in marketing and in programming, and just work with other young people like yourselves who are interested in film. So I think that's all in terms of our Film Academy programs. The only other thing to talk about is how you can keep in touch with us. You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We are very, very active on social media. So any opportunities that come up, any events, we will be shouting about them on Instagram and Twitter. You can also join two groups that we have on Facebook. So one is the BFI Film Academy alumni group. So if you've done a BFI Film Academy course, you can join this group to find out about all the opportunities that Zakia mentioned. And you can also join our Facebook networking group. So that's for you guys to meet each other and network with each other. And again, Winnie will be posting, if she hasn't already, the links in the chat box. You can also sign up to our newsletter. If you just go to the BFI Film Academy webpage and scroll all the way down, you'll be able to enter your email and sign up for our newsletter really quickly. We send it at least every 2 weeks. And again, all the opportunities, all the events are advertised in that newsletter. And finally, if you are not able to find information that you require in any of those places, then you can also email us on filmacademy@bfi.org.uk. So that's all about BFI Film Academy. And now I'll finally am going to hand over to Helen to talk about the UK film industry and start our masterclass. So Helen, if you can join us, welcome.
Hi, hello.
Hi. I'm handing over to you. The floor is all yours. Good luck.
Thanks very much, Alex. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for coming to join us today at the first of the new lab series. Very exciting to be here. I, as Alex mentioned at the beginning, run Talking Point, which is a training provider for the feature film and high-end TV industries. And we work very closely with people who are looking for their first break onto feature film productions, and also those who are looking to move up between the grades in their department once they are established. We have worked with hundreds and hundreds of trainees and assistants and juniors over the last 10 years, and we really do know that the more you can understand about how the industry is structured and what is expected of you, the more successful you will be. And that is the same for whether you want to work on set in one of the craft or technical grades, or you want to produce your own content as creative talent. So today we're going to have a little look at some of the 4 key areas that are useful when you're trying to get your head around how the UK film industry works. The next slide will show you just those 4 key areas that we're going to look at this afternoon. We are going to have a look at what the industry looks like, how it is set up and structured to create the content that we create. We are going to have a look at the difference between studio productions and independent productions. You may have an idea already about where you want to end up eventually, whether it is UK indie films or it's American studio blockbuster cinema, but we're going to have a little look at the differences between the 2 sectors. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about production post-COVID, the impact that COVID has had on the film industry in the UK, and what we've done to all come together to come back to work successfully. And then the final element of this session, I'm just going to touch briefly on inclusion and well-being, because that is something that is so paramount in all of our minds, that the industry that we work in and create is safe and positive for everybody. So we'll have a little chat about the steps that are being taken to ensure that that happens. The film industry is, as Alex alluded to at the very beginning, really quite complex. So this is going to be a quick taster version of how it all operates. I am aware that there's quite a lot of jargon, so if there's anything you don't understand or you would like clarifying, please do drop that in the Q&A and we can certainly come back to any points that need a bit more explanation. But let's start with the next slide, which has a look at the snapshot of the industry. So the UK film industry is a big contributor to not only the creative arts and the creative industries, but to the economy as well. In terms of the size of the workforce, there are around 91,000 people currently working in the whole film industry. So that is everybody from development assistants working on new scripts, all the way through to people who work in concessions at cinemas once the film's exhibited. Of that 91,000, and that is an approximate number, around 69,000 people work in what we call physical production. And physical production is the part of production where the film gets made. So there are around 69,000 people working on a vast array of different kinds of film projects. Crews really shift dependent on the size of the job, and that is dictated largely by the budget and the script. So you could have a relatively small team on documentaries. They prefer to have small teams because you're working very closely with often quite tricky situations, up to a blockbuster studio film that could have up to 3,000 people plus all working on that one project. It's important to know that everybody coming in to work in film predominantly works as a freelancer. So if you want to work as part of the crew on a film, you are a freelancer. You are employed for the duration of that job, and then you go on to a new project with a new employer. There are pros and cons to that. Some people love being freelance. Some people prefer to have a steady income. So it is something to think about where you sort of can best see yourself. In terms of the buoyancy of the industry, last year, it's very difficult to talk about last year, but in 2019 there were 185 feature films shot in the UK. Obviously 2020 had less, but it is coming back very quickly, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the impact of COVID. In terms of the contribution to the economy, the film industry really is considered as a critical one in terms of the amount of money we put back in to the country. Every film that gets made calculates what we call production spend, and that is everything that the production will spend to make the film in whichever part of the UK they're making. So that's money that's spent on studio hire, crew hire, kit hire, hotels, taxis, catering, and it all gets pulled together to a production spend cost. And in 2019, the film industry spent £3.6 billion in production spend in the UK. So you can see it does generate a huge amount of income. And that is one of the reasons why the government was really keen to get the film industry back up and running after COVID. We were one of the first sectors back and have managed to stay back successfully because of all the protocols that were quickly put in place. It's an industry where huge amounts of money change hands. There is no getting away from that. It is very much a business, and when we look at the studio films, it's very much that. You know, films like Star Wars: Force Awakens opening weekend generated over $500 million just in one weekend. So it is an industry where vast amounts of money are involved. So it is very much a business, and those businesses do have key production hubs throughout the UK. London and the South East has always been the most buoyant, and the reason for that is that the studios are based there, not just the American studios that we'll talk about, but the actual physical shooting stages. So you may have heard of some of them: Pinewood, Shepperton, Leavesden, Ealing. They're all based around London and the South East. That's not to say that there aren't other hubs all throughout the UK, but 70% of film production happens in London and the South East. There are, as I said, lots of other areas of the UK that are really vibrant at the moment and really busy, particularly Northern Ireland, and Wales is phenomenally busy at the moment. But again, it is dictated by the kind of films you want to work on, where you will be based. And the big films tend to gravitate to the studios because they need them to build those massive sets. But the lower budget filmmaking and TV production happens all throughout the UK. So whereas 10, 15 years ago or more, when I started out, you did really have to move to London to work on big films, that's not always the case now. You can absolutely have a career in film and TV drama all throughout the UK. Where the production's based is identified early on in development, in the first stage of production. All those conversations happen during development because it is very often script related as to where the production will be based. So the writer, producer, director, development team, if you're lucky enough to have one, will be ascertaining where is the most authentic place to shoot and where is the most cost-effective place to shoot. And that is a key part of the development process, that pooling together of resources. There are other stages of production, and all productions are different, and it's really important to always remember that. There are no two productions that are the same, but everything starts with a script or an idea, and that idea can come from a really wide range of sources. It could be a novel that a writer is adapting, it could be an original screenplay, it could be someone's life story for a biopic, it could be a piece of journalism from a newspaper. The idea is taken by talented writers and becomes a script, and that process can be done in a team of writers relatively quickly on a studio film, but if you're in an independent production, it can take a long time. And for all you emerging screenwriters out there, you do need a huge amount of resilience, because development can last a long time. But it's so important to get that script right. The script is the foundation of everything. Once that script is decided and locked off, the director and producer will also be working to bring in their key heads of department and their key cast. So you will have production designers and directors of photography starting in the development phases, because they will be working very closely with the director and the producer to pin down what the aesthetic vision is for this script. How will we tell this story visually? Similarly, editors will be brought on board, location scouts will be finding locations, and decisions will be made about where the production will be based. All of that is happening through development. A unit production manager or a line producer will be looking at the budget to make sure there's enough money for everything. And so that process then goes into the next stage of production, which is called pre-production, or prep, as we know it as. And prep is really setting up the offices, doing the camera tests, pinning down those locations, and bringing all the rest of the crews together so that everybody is ready for principal photography. And prep, again, really depends on the size of job. It could be a few weeks, it could be 8 months. It all depends just how much scale there is to achieve. But once the green light and the green light has happened, because the finance is in place and the script's locked off and everybody's there, principal photography starts. And this is the third stage of production. And this is the one where the film gets made. It's often known as physical production or principal photography. And again, depending on the script and the budget, that will dictate how long that process is. It could be weeks, it could be months. Obviously, on the very big films, it can take a long time. But that is the stage where the crew all comes together and works to tell the story in the way the director wants that story told. We are all there to support that one vision, telling the story. And through that process, post-production will be starting. It used to be that post really happened after physical production, but now it is very much embedded, even as early on in development. If you're working on high concept films like Star Wars or Marvel films, you know, a lot of the visual effects work is happening at very, very early stages now. But post-production is when the film is edited and that narrative arc that we need to retain the audience's enthusiasm is created. The sound's laid down, the music's laid down, grades are done, until the film is ready for distribution and then exhibition. So that is a brief sort of way to get your head around what the stages of production are. Some of you as filmmakers will already be very familiar with that, but if you haven't worked on a film yet or created your own content, that might be new, but I think it's always really useful to think of it in those blocks. Let's have a look at the next slide and have see what the different departments are in physical production. I'm not going to talk about all the different stages today because we don't have time, but I think given that most of you will be probably looking to work within production, it's quite a good idea to try and get your heads around just how many teams there are working on a film. As I said, every film is completely different. All depends on budget, but on a very big film, these departments open out into lots of other departments as well. So you might want to work in the art department, for example. Now, the art department has a huge range of different skills that are required. You might want to work in construction as a carpenter or a painter or a model maker or a rigger, building those sets to bring them to life. Or you might want to work with technical drawing up the space, or with the set decorating team, researching and identifying the props that are going to bring all those characters to life, or the props team who are making and physically, practically putting everything in place. and that's just the art department. The art department is the biggest team on a film, but there's so much scope to find your own niche and where your interests lie in every single team. You know, camera, you could be working with drones, you could be working in an aerial team or an underwater team or with the main unit or a stunt unit. There's so many different roles in each of the departments that I think that's what is one of the best things about working in the film industry. You can really play to where your personal interests and your strengths lie. Similarly, you can also really have a think about the kind of environment you want to work in. So you may love working in workshops where it's noisy and a bit messy, but you're really practical and immersed in using those craft skills. Or you might like being on set where it's quiet and hyper-focused and huge adrenaline rushes, because you have to be able to read the room and preempt what's happening and move very quickly and quietly, stealthily. Or you may prefer edit suites where it's nice and calm and you get good coffee and that kind of things in post-production. There are very, very many different working environments, which again is a real strength to the industry, because you can put yourself in the best position for you to succeed. We have amazing crews in the UK. We are really renowned for it, particularly in our craft and technical crews. And I would say that even if you're listening to this and looking at that thinking, well, I want to produce or I want to direct, I don't necessarily want to work on big films or other people's films, I would always say to people coming in that you will be a much better producer and a much better director if you have been exposed to good practice on professional film sets. You know, being a producer and a director is very much about leading big teams of people, and being on set or being working as part of a crew is a great way to see how, you know, the brilliant HODs do it. So I would say, you know, even if you are thinking of directing long term, producing long term, do try and get as much on-set experience as you can, just so that you can contextualise what needs to happen as you go through your own work. Let's have a look at the next slide, Fiona, please, because knowing that, we do know that crews are one of the big reasons that the productions come to the UK, but why is the UK so attractive to producers, and not just producers in Europe? We have become a worldwide destination for the global film industry. And there are several reasons for that. The 5 that I've named here sort of are the key ones. First of all, we do have fiscal incentives. We have a tax break that the government gives film producers if you qualify as a British film. So to qualify as a British film, you have to be based in the UK, using British crew, locations, doing, I think, around 75% of your spend has got to be here. But if you qualify, you get a tax break of 25% of 80% of what you will spend as cash. So that is a huge boost if you're working on a very big film. And if you're working on a very big film, a studio film, you know, there's millions and millions of pounds that we will give you as the UK to come and work here. So that is a really big driver. Now, other countries have that too, but what sets the UK aside from all of that is, as I mentioned earlier, we have a phenomenal crew base. We are world renowned for our craft and technical skills. We have such a long history of brilliant technicians that have trained the next generation. So, you know, we genuinely are renowned, particularly for our art department and technical abilities. So that's another reason producers want to come here. Not only will they get the money, they know that they will get a good crew to tell that story, make that script come alive. We've also become, in the last sort of 5-10 years, what we call a one-stop shop. So that means that you can come and develop your film in the UK, but now take it all the way through to distribution and exhibition. It used to be that a lot of post-production was done outside of the UK, but in the last sort of 5, 6, 7 years, I would say since the last Star Wars trilogy started, more of the big visual effects houses have permanent bases here now. So all that visual effects work can happen in London so that directors and producers can stay here for the duration. So we really can go from script to screen, which is a huge benefit to producers, because obviously you're not flying everybody all around the world trying to finish the film. And then the other reason is within that script to screen idea is that we have a really wide range of locations in the UK. So it's not just the infrastructure of the studios and the access to crew, but we can go in a very small geographical space from very gritty urban locations to really beautiful landscapes. We also have a very wide range of unique historical sites which play very well in worldwide cinema. So producers coming to the UK can really package their films very effectively. London is also a global city, as we all know. It's not a hardship for your big American cast to have to come and live in London in a beautiful hotel or apartment or house for 6 months. People like coming here, and that is another big pull. And it is, as I said, very easy to travel around. It's a small country, so even if you're based in London, you can get to Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland very quickly. And finally, we are successful. The UK has created some of the most successful and popular and influential film franchises in cinematic history. You only have to look at Harry Potter or Bond or the latest Star Wars franchise to look at how that is still happening in the UK. It's fantastic that is portrayed so well on screen, and that we see so many successful British films at the BAFTAs and the Oscars every year. And so all of that does come together to make the UK an extremely attractive destination for film production. And film production is really high at the moment. I have never known it to be this busy in the 25 years I've been working in film. It's a brilliant time for you all to be getting started and coming in, because there is a huge amount of work. But let's have a look at the difference in approach in the next slide, which shows us the two sort of key ways that films are put together. So once those producers have decided that the UK is the destination, there are two very different approaches. And this is something to really bear in mind, particularly if you're writing scripts as to where your film could end up. In the UK, we have either the studio system or the independent system. And the studios are largely American, and they are the blockbuster cinemas that you will go and see at your multiplexes. I would very much hope you will go and see independent films as well, but they are predominantly those big cinematic films. Both of them operate in a very different way. If you are a scriptwriter and you have a screen and you go, or a director with a project, and if you go down the studio route, the studio, if they take your film, will absolutely guarantee that film will get made and will reach a large audience. I say absolutely guaranteed. There are no guarantees, but you have got a much better chance of getting it made and for them to find that audience, because they will invest a huge amount of income. They will probably have a writing team that will, and work with a development team of executives that will develop that idea. And then they will make sure that there is a director in play, that the crew are put together, that there's enough money to finance the production, that it is distributed, marketed brilliantly, and has a home for audiences, be that in theatrical release in cinemas or in streaming platforms or at home. That all sounds fantastic, and it is. But the flip side of that is that you lose all creative autonomy, or a huge element of your creative autonomy, because you do give it to them to make. The independent sector works in the opposite way. So as an independent producer or writer or director, you have to raise all the money. You have to raise the money for development, you have to raise the money for prep and principal photography, post-production. You then have to pay sales agents and distributors who will work with you to find an audience for that film, you know, go to different film festivals, make sure it's creating a profile. That all comes down to the independent producer. It can take 10, 15 years to get a film off the ground to be a success. There are absolutely no guarantees that it will get there. However, you absolutely retain all your creative autonomy and input. So it's sort of chalk and cheese, really. That they also make films in very different ways, because the money that's involved in an independent film is so much lower than the money that's involved in a studio film. Studio films can have budgets that go up to, you know, $200-300 million. Independent films can be made for as little as £500,000. I'm sure a lot of you are making them for considerably less money, but it is, you see it on the screen. If you want to do a lot of visual effects or have big cast, you know, associated, you're going to need a lot of money to do that. Independents have to create jigsaws of finance as well, which is why it is so time consuming. And anyone looking to go into producing in the independent sector, you do have to have nerves of steel, because there are so many moving feats. You have to make sure that you can qualify for the tax credit, because that is, as we've just seen, gives you a big cash injection. And then you're sort of going to different production sources. The biggest, obviously, for the UK independent sector is the BFI. The BFI run a whole range of different funds which can invest in your projects, from short films all the way up to very large sort of independent feature films. And what the BFI do brilliantly is track talent. You know, they really nurture the next generation of filmmakers all the way through. So always keep an eye out and network within the BFI networks, because that is the best route in. But then there are other pockets of money that you can dip into from the Northern Ireland Film and Television Commission, Creative Scotland, Film Wales, the Arts Council, Film 4, BBC Films. You know, they all pull together to create little bits of investment that give you your budget. Also, product placement is another big area that productions use to generate an income stream, as well as crowdfunding, which is still a really successful part of a lot of British filmmaking initiatives. Let's have a look at the next slide to have a quick look at who the key studios are. They're often referred to as the Big Five. You will be all very familiar with all of them. You will be surely viewing their content. It does get quite complex because they're owned by parent companies and have lots of affiliates. But Disney, for example, own the lion's share of the film industry. They've just bought 20th Century Fox. They have Marvel. They have Lucas. They have the Disney back catalogue. So you know, these organisations hold a huge amount of content and finance, and now have a permanent base in the UK, a lot of them, which is fantastic for the film industry, because it means that there's a constant income revenue and employment for our crews. It also gives us the ability to bring so many more new people into the industry, which is what I'm sure you will all be very pleased to hear. But Disney have a permanent base at Pinewood Studios, Netflix have a permanent base at Shepperton, Warner Brothers are based at Leavesden. So, you know, there's a lot of content being made by these Big Five studios in the UK. The sort of next slide explains the sort of the middle ground, and these are the British independent production companies, but work in a slightly different way, because these have very often got distribution deals already in place with those Big Five companies. So Eon famously is a British production company that makes Bond films, as we all know. Heyday Films is a British independent company led by David Heyman, who has made Harry Potter and Fantastic Beasts, as well as a whole host of other smaller independent films. And Working Title, who are possibly, they are absolutely classified as an independent production company, but Universal distributes most of their content. So again, always trying to make sure that they've got an audience in play. But the pure independent sector is captured on the next slide, which, and this is just at the tip of the iceberg. All I've done here is choose some of the British independent production companies that are working on a wide range of content. DNA Films is Alex Garland's company, who make Ex Machina, Annihilation. Sigma is based in Scotland. Warp Films is based in Sheffield and famously made This Is England and recently Yardie. 16 Films is Ken Loach's company. Bad Wolf is based in Wales. All these companies are making the British films that you will hopefully have seen at the cinema, if not on different streaming platforms, and are working in that way of pulling together all the different funding partners, as I mentioned earlier, to try and get their content on screen. Their budgets are considerably smaller, but there is a huge amount of creativity within these projects. That is literally just some of them. The other thing I did want to highlight is that, and producers amongst you will be aware, but just in case you don't know, every film is set up as a separate entity. So even if you're working for Star Wars, your contract won't be with Lucasfilms. It will be with the production company that is set up for the duration of the project, and then it's disbanded. And it's just much easier and keeps it quite contained. But if you have your own production company, or that is your goal long term, every film you make will have a separate company in place. The other big shift we've seen, and we'll see on the next slide, is the impact that the streaming platforms have made. They have changed everything in terms of how we watch and digest content, particularly in the last year, as I'm sure all of you are very aware. Netflix particularly created a seismic shift in how content is not only distributed, but how we view it. We do whole sessions on Netflix because they're just fascinating in terms of a business model. But they now have over 207 million subscribers globally and are spending approximately $11 billion a year on content, and announced recently that they absolutely anticipate to release 71 films in 2021 alone. So you're going to be seeing a lot more content coming onto that streaming platform over the next year, which is also brilliant for the UK production community because they are based here and are making a huge amount of those productions in the UK. Disney, probably the new kid on the block in terms of streaming platforms. We all knew that Disney were creating their own channel, but nobody could have anticipated the launch conditions that they would have in March 2020, which suddenly everybody was at home. They couldn't have created better conditions if they had tried. They gained 50 million subscribers in the first 6 months alone, which took Netflix about 7 years to get to that state. But they are growing it year on year. They've put in more adult content, more documentaries, and now launching their theatrical releases on Disney Plus as a premieres first. I'm sure you've all seen them. You may even be subscribers. Most people in the UK are now subscribing to at least one of these streaming platforms. Netflix and YouTube are now in the top 4 viewed channels in the UK. They have completely eclipsed Channel 4 and BBC 2. And over 80% of UK homes now have streaming platforms. And I am sure most of you have more than one. And they are really shifting how we watch content. They've given a huge platform to documentary filmmaking, which is brilliant. And obviously just access to content is so much better now, which is so important when you're coming into an industry like film, because you do need to keep watching films. So it has made it a lot easier for us, no question. BFI Player I have included here because it is slightly different in terms of how it creates content, but it's just a good reminder that it is there and a perfect portal for everybody to watch more independent British film, which is really important. It'll be very interesting to see how this pans out once cinemas open in the next month or so. And I would obviously encourage everybody to safely return to cinemas, but we'll see what the impact of that is on these streaming platforms. But these are great news for the UK because they ensure that we need to keep making content that they can put on their own channels. Someone's just saying they're excited for cinemas to open. We are all excited for cinemas to open. It's very, very long overdue. Right, that was a very quick snapshot on the structure. Let's have a little look now about the impact of COVID, because COVID really did have a huge impact on the industry. And this next slide will give you a quick outline on in which ways it did. When we first shut down early March 2020, BEC2, the film industry's trade union, estimated that over 50,000 jobs were lost. Because of the way freelancers work, a lot of them have fallen through the cracks. So it was really important that the industry could all come together and get back very, very quickly, which we did. The BFI worked very closely with the guilds and the British Film Commission to make sure that we could be as safe as we could possibly be and to keep those cameras turning over. So what we saw was how flexible the film industry can be. And this is something that's important to recognise as you start your careers in film. We are solution finders. You know, we thrive on challenges. We are, the whole point of making films is to be flexible. And all of that really did come to fruition in terms of getting us up and running again. But there have been some significant changes. You will now see COVID teams on film productions. You know, they will be led by a COVID supervisor, and people on the big films are being tested 3 times a week, working in bubbles. Everybody wears a mask all the time. It's very strict, and the reason for that is to keep everybody safe and to keep everybody working. So that is one of the core changes you will see. I don't know how that will continue going forward, but I think people are still keen to urge on the side of caution. I would really recommend anybody coming back into filmmaking to have a look on the Screen Skills website. They do a coronavirus certificate, which is like a 30-minute online module, which just goes through all the preventative measures that we all need to take to stay safe, but it means that you can put it on your CV that you've got it, which is really useful. So have a look at that if you haven't already. COVID was hugely beneficial to lots of people though, because it opened up a really wide range of training opportunities. We all had to learn how to work together in a very different way. So development slates, you know, really valued the time that everybody wasn't working on films, could really start thinking about other projects and work on those scripts. There was loads of training content put online. We moved all of our courses and workshops into an online space and will continue to stay in that space for the foreseeable future, I think, just because it's so much more democratic. You know, you don't have to get on a train from Aberdeen to come to London to do a training course anymore. It's become a very, as I said, democratic, equitable way of learning, and it has really heightened people's creativity. So that has been a real positive for the industry of being locked down. Most of the production offices have gone paperless, and this was something that we were all really trying to work towards anyway, because of the impact on the environment, because of it's not possible to use that much paper. that has been another big shift. There's a lot more paper-free work in productions, but I think ultimately we've all had to find different ways to be creative and juggle a lot more plates and be flexible, but we have absolutely proved that we have come back and are very much back in business. If we could move on to the next slide, I just wanted to touch on well-being in the industry, because this is something we get asked about probably more than anything else. You know, is it safe? Is it inclusive? It's something that really was highlighted in the wake of Me Too and all the campaigns surrounding that, and sadly again with recent allegations. It is an industry where you do have to be resilient, you know, and that's whether you're writing scripts or trying to raise finance to produce films, or you are working in special effects, or you're a carpenter or hair and makeup artist. Resilience is a core quality that you really do need if you're going to succeed. It is inclusive. It is so much better than it ever has been. And the reason for that is that everybody's come together and recognised that whilst, yes, you do have to persevere and you do have to be resilient, we need to make it, as an industry, far more representative of the real world. And there have been huge amounts of work to make sure that access to all positions is widened, and the BFI Film Academy is really leading the way in making sure that that is happening on a daily basis, and that any kind of bullying and harassment is dealt with promptly, just like any other sectors. I don't think the film industry is by any means the worst, but there have been cases, there are cases, but what we're doing as an industry is putting those steps and measures in to make sure that it can be addressed. The Film and TV Charity have a 24-hour hotline. The studios all have dedicated HR resources. You'll find anonymous call numbers on every call sheet now on the big films, so that if there ever is a problem, you can definitely raise it and have it addressed. So it is very much a safer working environment, more positive working environment than it has been. But it is important for everybody working in it to make sure that you are really looking after yourselves and keeping well. The hours can be brutal. There is no getting away from that. And that is whether you're, you know, sitting in your house on your laptop trying to write, or you're standing in a field at 4 o'clock in the morning trying to keep costumes clean. It's a different working environment, and you do have to buy into having huge amounts of energy. So it is really important to keep well. Sleep being the most important thing. The other thing to be aware of is that around well-being, you know, there are always medics on set, but now there are also mental health first aiders. The studios are leading the way with this, so we are seeing more and more visible evidence that is happening, to make sure that everybody's working in the best and most positive environments they can be. Let's have a look at the final slide. But I just wanted to mention the importance of networking, because no matter how the business side of this is structured and the impact that COVID's had, the one thing that is relevant to everybody at every stage of the industry is the importance of networking. It is a word of mouth industry. You do have to put yourself out there so that people know who you are and you're on their radar. And obviously that depends on the kind of job you want to do and how you approach it. But you do need to make sure that your communication skills are well honed. And to be honest, a lot of that is practice. You will feel ridiculous, but the more you can do it out loud and in your mirror or whatever, it does really, really help. I have to say, I was really impressed at the beginning of this at the amount of people who were sharing their Instagram details in the chat button. Absolutely brilliant. These are your people in your network. Absolutely reach out to them. You know, in this one group here today, there will be screenwriters and producers and directors. There may be production designers, cinematographers, and this is a fantastic way to start that collaboration process and really put those networking skills into practice, because it really will stand you in really good stead as you come into the first stages of your careers. That was a very fast run through and a lot of information, and I'm very aware that there was a lot to take in. And I'm opening up for questions now, but I did just want to also mention, if there's anything that isn't covered that you do need information about, please do feel free to get in touch with us at Talking Point, and we can certainly direct you to where you are. And all our course information and workshops that are coming up over the next few months are on our website as well.
Thank you so much, Helen. That was super insightful. And as you can imagine, we have loads of questions, so I'm just gonna get stuck into them immediately. By far, the biggest number of them is about getting jobs in the industry. So I'll start with that. I'll kind of combine two questions. We have a question about from Imogen. Who are the individuals that directly hire crew, entry-level positions specifically? Should we seek out heads of departments, ADs, supervising art directors, talent managers, etc., or just contact main production companies?
Okay.
And kind of related to that, Diamante is also asking more specifically about how would you go about getting a runner and assistant jobs? So those first kind of entry-level runner jobs, are they listed anywheres?
Okay, well, they are very interlinked. So you it all depends on the job that you're going for, is the first answer to that question. But if you're looking to be a floor runner or a PA, you need to get in touch with the head of the department. That's your first point of call. If you're working on looking to work on the very, very, very big jobs, it might not be the very head of department, but you need to get your CV up to date and then send it to the relevant person in the team. So if you want to work in the art department, send it to a supervising art director. If you want to work as a runner on the floor, send it to first assistant directors. If it's the camera, send it to directors of photography. It's a process of elimination and then just getting it out there. IMDb is a brilliant resource for ascertaining who is working with who, and then it is just a question of trying to find contact numbers, which isn't easy, but you do have to be a bit of a detective and set aside work and be quite disciplined about it. Jobs are being listed more and more on Facebook pages and on social media. You do have to be quite discerning, because some of them sadly can be quite exploitative. I personally think it's always the best starting point to reach out to the most professional productions and crew, and then go that way. But to be honest, you'll probably be able to pick up work here by just networking brilliantly on this platform as well. But in terms of getting onto a film, you would be sending your CV to the heads of department.
Okay, great. And then again, related question from Caitlin. For newcomers to the industry, is it easier getting work with studios who hire more people, or independent films where teams are smaller, potentially more supportive, or does it just completely vary depending on projects and companies?
It does vary, and it used to always be that you started on the smaller jobs and worked your way up to the top. But now it is possible to go in and your first job could be a Disney film. And I think a lot of this comes down to personal preference. Do you want to work on a massive production with loads of people and the work to be quite niche, or do you want to work in a much smaller team which can be potentially more collaborative and more team building in its approach? Personally, I think when you're starting out, the independent sector is the best fit, because you will meet people who are really like-minded to you and be supported a little bit more. It's the same process of reaching people. You can send blanket CVs to those production companies, but to be honest, you're better reaching out to the heads of department, because, as I said, each film is set up as its own company anyway. So it is, there's no sort of right or wrong. It's kind of, and also a lot of the time it's whatever you're offered. That's the great thing. You don't know what you're going to be, what's going to come your way. So it is, I think both are brilliant and absolutely accessible.
Great. And now, careers question from those in the audience that are looking to make their own content. So a question from Amit: how can aspiring directors above 25, but let's just say, how can aspiring directors overall get their foot in the door? Where can they find opportunities to collaborate?
So, that is the key word, collaborating. If you are, and this applies to screenwriters and producers as well as directors, the most important thing whilst you're developing your slate of projects and ideas is to network. You need to be meeting as many people as you can. Directors need to meet emerging producers. Producers often work in a co-production capacity with each other. There are loads of opportunities for that. And have been even through COVID. I think training events like this are great ways to meet like-minded people. And then going forward, as the world comes back to normal, anything like Q&As after films, any of those fabulous residential courses that the Academy do, or the summer courses, and anything that just puts you in place with other creative people is really important. And then, you know, register for all the organisation's newsletters, BAFTA, BECTU, the National Film and Television School, the guilds and associations. They all have really good industry information that can help. But it is about getting out there and meeting as many people as you can and watching as many films as you can. That's the other critical thing about the industry.
Yeah. And then for those directors that are looking to make their own content, can you just talk a bit about the organizations where they can apply for funding? Jessica said that she didn't quite catch all of them.
So it would be producers that would ordinarily apply for the funding. And the main ones, I mean, from going up, you can do your own crowdfunding, obviously. But then look at organisations like Film London or the BFI hubs that are all over the UK. They will have access to pockets of local and regional funding. Then Creative England, the BFI is the main point of industry funding. The Arts Council. And then you do have to be a little bit maverick. There will be little pots of gold that you can find all, you know, around the place that might be relevant to the project that you're doing. It could be grant-based or charity-based. So you do, as I said, have to be a bit of a detective and try and find those little pots of gold.
And I would also say check out BFI Network, because they do offer funding for filmmakers who are quite young and just starting out with their projects. So that's a really, really good place for you guys to start.
And also the bigger production companies do run schemes, which is why it's so important to engage with everybody on social media, because they do, there's a great one called Palette Crew that puts out job calls for people working on productions. But then the bigger production companies like Neil Street or Working Title do schemes sort of every year or so to help people get in. So it is really worthwhile networking with those kind of organisations as well.
A really interesting question from Sarah. Would you mind talking a bit about unions? I know a number of established crew are with BECTU, but should we think about them as trainees as well?
There are really strict rules around talking about unions, aren't there? I'm not sure that I don't want to lead the charge of revolt, but I absolutely think it is really important to support our unions. And I think BECTU have been phenomenal in the last year in terms of making sure that freelancers were properly looked after, and they have done a huge amount of training. So I think they're definitely worth looking at. They do really, really reduced rates for new entrants and emerging technicians and producers, directors, writers. So I would definitely have a look. Every department has its own branch as well, so they can address anything that's coming up that impacts specific job roles. But I think, yeah, we all need to support the unions because they do a really important job.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of questions from David Thomas and Jack Smith that are actually related to your first answer about careers and finding those people to speak to about getting a job on set. The questions are, how do you find contact details of the heads of departments? And two, how do you appropriately approach these employers? Can you send your CV, or do you need to strike up a conversation first? Can you, for example, approach on the knowledge, or is this unadvisable? What would your tips be, Helen?
So I would suggest your CV is your starting point. That is your first communication tool. So you need to make sure that it looks like a film industry one, because the film industry ones are quite different. That's the first thing. And then you need to start making a database of people to reach. As I said, IMDb will give you the names. Then you have to use the industry directories to find out their contact details. So you can either use the knowledge, which I have got a copy of here, which can look like this, or it can look bigger. And they do have a version online, and that is just lists and lists of people and different companies. K's have a similar one, and they have an art diary for anybody who wants to work in the art department. The K's art diary is where all the art department practitioners are listed. Both of those do have an online presence, so it's definitely worth checking them out there. They should also have copies in public libraries. And once the things like the production shows and the media shows get it back up and running, there will be, the copies are there. It is, it's one of those things, you can email your CV, but ultimately this is a word of mouth industry. You do have to get used to picking up the phone and introducing yourself. And it is really daunting, but it is something you need to remember that everybody does it. Everybody has to do it. Everybody has started, and I absolutely remember still what it's like to start out, and that doesn't really go. And I think people are very generous usually and gracious with their time. So it is just a question of saying, hi, I'm Helen. I'm really looking to work as a floor runner. Would you mind if I get my CV to you? Always ask if the person's got time to speak. And if they can't, they'll very quickly say, yeah, I can't talk now, but call me at 6 or whenever. It is just that sort of process of trying to reach as many people as you can. And if you're lucky and they've got time to chat, they will chat. I think it's always really important to remember it's in their best interest too to be meeting new crew and new talent. So very often you're doing them a favour by introducing yourself. So don't go in all really arrogant, but think of it as you're doing them a favour too.
Great. And then now loads of questions about CVs. So we have a question, what sort of things should you include in your CV if you don't have much practical film experience? And then a couple of others. Carla is asking, should CVs be kept concise and be no longer than a page, or should they be an exhaustive list of experience? And again, related, Daniel is asking, how do you get your CVs to look like or meet the standards of an industry CV? What is that industry CV standard?
So I know that you're going to be covering CVs in these labs, aren't you, as part of those sessions? We also have a CV and networking session in a couple of weeks. The details of that are on the website. You need it to be one page, absolutely. You need it to be clear and concise. So really, bullet points are great. And if you don't have industry credits, think about all the transferable skills that you can bring that will add value to the production. So the number one thing that people will be looking for is a driving license. You do sadly need to be able to drive for most jobs on film. Screen Skills have bursaries for driving lessons if you haven't started looking at that yet, but that's really useful. Then just, as I said, transferable skills. So, if you've worked in hospitality or events and you want to go and work as a floor runner, that's brilliant, because that says to me you can stand on your feet for 12 hours, you can deal with difficult situations and members of the public, you can keep things moving, and work to a very tight schedule. All of that is what we do on film. So they absolutely do cross over. It's just how you frame it. Similarly, if you have been working in a florist shop and you love working with flowers and plants, set decorating, props, these are all areas that that all of those skills will really shine. So do think about what you can bring to the party and just make that very, very clear.
And now let's say you got that first job in a film crew and you're starting on your first day. We have a question from Ada. Are there any particular dress codes on film sets for the crew? What should you be thinking about on that first day on set?
So you need layers, because you don't know in this country what weather is going to come your way. Also, you can get very cold. If you're outside all day and it's wet, it can be quite miserable. Similarly, if you're in a big stage at Pinewood, it can get quite cold. So think layers always. Not so much big puffer jackets, I think. I think it's better to do layers in a wet weather coat. If you're on set, you need to add dark colours, just because any bright colours can distract the actors and the director. So think dark colours. I think be comfortable. You need really comfy shoes. We don't have sandals or anything like that. You do need to be safe, but comfy trainers. Have wet weather gear in your bag just in case. Spare socks, always good. But just comfy. I mean, people wear kind of cargo-y trousers because they've got pockets in. It's all very practical, really, if you're on set. If you're in the offices, it's slightly different because you might have heating, or the luxury of heating or aircon. So, and on the big studio films, it's casual, but it's quite smart casual. It's professional. And on set, it's a little bit more practical. Fleeces, wet weather coats, but dark colours, definitely.
So dark colors, layers, warm up. You'll be on your feet for hours on end, so make sure you're comfortable. I think we have time for one last question, and I'll ask a question from Molly that's really interesting. As a producer on high-end TV or feature film, how common is it to have a creative input as well as logistical?
As a producer, hugely. You know, producers are there carrying the whole project. If you work as a producer on a studio film, you might just be there doing the logistics as a unit production manager. But if you brought the project to life, be it for high-end TV drama or feature film, it's your baby. You are carrying it all the way through, getting it over the finish line, and that requires huge creative input in all areas. So it's budgeting is creative. It's not just, we think very much in terms of sort of the visuals, but I think you can't really not be creative and work in the film industry, because every aspect of it requires some imagination and some creativity, which is why we're all working in this and not an office somewhere. But hugely creative, I think, definitely.
And just to add to that, Molly, we are planning some labs later on this summer about producing, and especially that creative aspect of producing. So keep an eye out on the BFI Film Academy's social channels, and we'll announce when that event will be. But later on this summer. Thank you so much, Helen. That was really, really insightful. I've learned a lot, and I know that attendees are saying the same thing in the chat. Thank you everyone for your questions. I'm sorry we're not able to get through all of them. Just before you go, I would love to ask you if you have a couple of minutes to spare to fill in our event survey and let us know what you thought about today and how you think we can improve our labs going forward. That would be hugely helpful. Winnie has just posted the link to the survey in the chat, but it will also be emailed to you by Eventbrite. And as I said at the beginning, today was our first lab of the 2021-2022 series. We'll be holding labs on the second Saturday of every month moving forward. So next one will be on the 12th of June, and we'll be announcing the topic and the guests soon. So keep an eye out on the Film Academy social channels. If you have any short films that are complete or are about to be completed, please submit them to the Future Film Festival. Our submissions are open until August. And also our young programmer applications are open as well. I know that there was a person in the chat who asked about tips for getting into programming. That was Miranda. I would urge you to apply for our young programmers scheme. Applications are open on the BFI jobs portal until Friday. So this session is recorded and will be posted on the BFI YouTube channel later on this week. So if you've missed anything or if you just want to watch it again, you will be able to. Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekends and see you in June. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you so much.